Good afternoon, class. Today we're going to be dealing with percents. This may be review for some of you, but we're going to set up some different types of problems or maybe some higher level percent problems that should challenge you a little bit. First thing we're going to talk about here is that, grab my pen here. First thing we're going to talk about is a percent is a ratio. Ratio is nothing more than a fraction that compares a number to 100. So anytime we're dealing with a percent, here's the symbol for percent, we're going to be comparing it to the number 100. So in this case, the little example here, 39% really means 39 for every 100. So that would be written as a fraction or a ratio. 39 over 100 is equivalent to 39%, which some of you have written as a decimal of 0.39. So all three of these mean the same thing. Key concept that you can use on your note sheet for any tests or quizzes. We're going to talk about how to set up percent problems using proportions or equations, and you can use either one. I will not make you use one over the other. You can represent A is P% of B using a percent proportion like this here. So A and B would be set up as a fraction as the part and the whole. So in this example down here, we'll talk about how to fill that in with part and whole. If you're using the equation format for A is P% of B, then A is going to be the equal part. P is always going to be next to the percent symbol, and you're going to multiply it by B, the whole part. Some things I want to point out to you. The of word is a kind of an important word in these percent problems because the bottom number in the proportion will always be the number that follows of. So this will always be the whole part. So B represents the whole part and always follows the word of. So of B always goes on the bottom. Typically, when we're talking about is, that means equals. The number here referring to the equals part goes on top. And the same thing will be true when you're setting up your percent equation, if that's what you choose to use. The equals part always goes over here by itself, or the is part. And then the of part goes over here next to the percent. So when we're setting these up using the words whole, we could rephrase the sentence up above and rewrite it as the part is, I'm going to change that, hold on. The part is P% of the whole. So in this case, the part is always over here by itself. That was the A part. So the part always goes on top in the proportion. So that's referring to the A, and if you're using that example. And then P always goes over here over 100. So whatever the percent is, that always goes over 100. Over here, P will always be next to the percent symbol, and then we'll always have the whole being multiplied by it. So let's do some examples. See if that makes more sense. So here we're talking about 84 is 63 are going to be our two numbers set up in a fraction or a ratio if we're going to use the proportion set, and we're trying to find the P or the percent, so we don't know what that is. So if we're going to set this up in a proportion, remember the of part always goes on the bottom. This is the bottom. So 84, the top number is always the is part, so here's your top, 63, and then P, which we don't know, will go over 100. So we're just going to set this up, cross multiply, 63 times 100 is going to be 6,300, 84 times P, so then we would just divide 6,300 by 84 to get P equals 75. Now we can solve this same problem using the percent equation. So we know 63 is our part that we have. That's going to equal P% of 84. So of in an equation means times. So we want to take 84 times P and set that equal to 63. So this will be a P%. I like to put my number first when I do a multiplication problem. So just remember that of means to multiply. So we're going to divide by 84 just as we did on the other side. But in this case, we're going to get a decimal. 0.75 equals P%. Well, anytime we're working with percent problems, the P will most often be presented in a decimal, but we have to move it over by multiplying by 100 anytime we're trying to find the percent. So that's just going to say that our percent is 75, just like we got over here. So there's an example of using equation format or proportion either way. Either one gives you the same answer. So in this situation, we're going to be working with a family who is selling a car to a dealership. They're going to sell it for 60% less than what they already paid. So they originally paid $9,000 for it. We got to find what price they actually sold it for. There's a couple ways to do this. Well, we know that we have 60%. Let me get that down here a little lower. We know we have 60%. 60% is going to be equal to, and our whole in this situation is the $9,000. That's the amount that we originally paid. So that's going to be our bottom number. We just don't know what that 60% is. So by cross multiplying these, we can solve for this. So we would take 60 times 9,000. We got 540,000, and that will equal 100x. So dividing by 100 just gets us our 60%. So we get 5,400. So this is not what they're actually selling the car for, though. They're reducing the original price by that. So we would have to take 9,000 and subtract. See, remember they said it was less than they paid. So we would have to actually subtract that 5,400 from the 9,000. So they're actually going to be selling it for 3,600 or 3,600. Now another way of figuring this out is, if you remember, all percentages are all in reference to 100. So if we're going to take 60% off of something, we're actually paying 40%. So if we wanted to solve this without having to do a subtraction problem, if we want to find out what we're going to sell it for, figure out what 40% of 9,000 is, rather than have to subtract. So in this case, we would take 9,000 and multiply by 40, and then divide by 100. To get 3,600. So 40 times 9,000 is 360,000. And then dividing by 100, we get the same answer. We get our 3,600, but we didn't have to do this little subtraction problem after we found the answer. So when you're answering problems, make sure that you have answered the question, not just found the percentage. Here's another example. We're going to do 30% of what number is 12.5. So in this case, we're trying to find the whole. We're trying to find what we originally started with. So we would set this up, 12.5 over, we don't know the whole, and we do know the percentage, so 30 over 100. So we would do like we've been always doing, just cross multiply these. So 30x would equal 12.5 times 100 is 1,250. So we'd take 1,250 and we would divide by 30. So 30, we're going to get a decimal of 4.1666667. So we can round that to 41.67. Since we started with decimals, we can accept a decimal. But if you guys remember, that really is going to be 41 and 2/3 if we were dealing with fractions. 0.666 is just a repeating decimal for 2/3. That's just an example of how you're going to find a different missing part. Now we're going to deal with a formula called the simple interest formula. And the simple interest formula deals with percentages, but deals with it in a different manner. So we're going to give you this formula, and this formula you can use on your key concept sheet, where I is going to stand for the interest that we're going to earn on something. P is referring to the principal. That's your investment. So really, when you're referring to P, that's going to be your investment, or how much you're starting with in the bank, or if you're giving that to someone as a loan of some sorts. And then R is going to be that rate at which you're going to charge or be charged, depending on which end you're on. And that's your annual interest rate. And we always want to have that written as a decimal. So when you have your R, that is your percentage, you want to change that to a decimal before you work with it. So anytime you substitute that in, you want to change that decimal to that percent to a decimal before you work with it. And then T in the problem is just referring to the number of years that you're investing that at. So here's a simple example. We have $100 that we're going to earn simple interest of 2.5% for 6 years. So we know that 2.5 really is going to be 0.025 as a decimal. So we're just going to substitute everything in. We have $100. We have 0.025 as our rate, and 6. So we're just going to multiply all these. So 100 times 0.025 times 6. And we get 15 is the amount of interest that we earned off of $100 being put into an account. Okay, we'll do this other example in class, or it's actually going to be one of them that you're going to work on in class. So we will save that for class time due to our time. I'm over 12 minutes now. So do your examples after the video and come to class with any questions.